Well, good afternoon. Tell us your name and the career that you have pursued in your life.
Oh, thanks for asking, Chris. Uh, Teacher is the main career that I ascribe to, but I've taken a few twists and turns along the way.
Well, that's okay. And your name
Yeah,
is Ray Stewart,
I am Ray Stewart.
and you are located in Ohio, where it's blustery and windy today.
It is, yes. It's yeah, not quite the day that I want to be working outside, but
You do a
I'm
lot of work outside, right?
I do, I do.
So
I've
tell us
always
what you're
got
doing now.
well, gardening starts a lot earlier than some people realize, just because not only do I have a vegetable garden, a little early for that, but I also have a nursery. So I'm growing native plants that I'll be sharing and selling, around during the growing season. So I have to watch for those. I was just out a couple of days ago when it was nicer and planted 50 pots with pawpaw seeds. So I've never done that before. This will be an adventure. Hopefully, some of them will sprout
Now,
because
we are in
pawpaws are,
Ohio. I was going to say, you might have to explain what a pawpaw is.
pawpaw is a native fruiting tree. It is often described as a kind of a tropical flavor, kind of a peachy mango kind of flavor. Um, and they're not available in the marketplace. They don't ship well, they don't keep well. So you got to have one close at hand, catch it when the fruit is ready to drop and eat it immediately. And they're delicious.
Now, Ray, you have had all kinds of education. What was your formal education, and what are you doing still to maintain knowledge in the career that you're pursuing now?
Oh boy. So a bachelor's degree in botany from the 70s. Then I took a short break to go overseas and work in the Peace Corps in Guatemala as an agricultural advisor. And then came back and got a master's degree in Latin American studies. Um, Very interested in that since I had been serving in Latin America. So there was a good fit as far as my interest goes there. Um, and then about 15 years ago, I started on another master's degree in education. I was teaching at the time, and it was just a delightful experience.
Teaching,
Um,
teaching who? What age?
oh, I was teaching
What environment?
middle school science, public school in Elyria, Ohio,
Okay.
which is my hometown, uh, where I grew up, but I now live in Amherst, right next door. Yeah.
So all of that education, was that important, do you think, to you being a successful teacher?
I've been a lifelong learner, so I've always had an interest in taking joy in learning. So I probably took too many professional development classes uh,
Never.
over the years because it all seemed so very interesting, and so I always wanted to do something to be better at whatever I was doing. And teaching, you can always do something to get better at what you're doing because there's always challenges and there's always new skill sets that you can adopt along the way. So,
So you taught what is traditionally considered a very difficult age in a public school setting. What would you say to young people who might be considering a career in education that may want to become teachers? What kind of advice can you give us? Can you
yeah,
dispel any of those myths or can you confirm them?
well, I can say teaching is not for everyone.
Right. It's
If you think you may want to be a teacher because you've been in the classroom as a student and you think, oh, there's a profession for me. Well, consider other things too. There may be a lot of other things that you can enjoy doing. And I would say teaching is something that you have to really love. You're going to get a master's degree in order to teach, and that's a lot of education, and you can earn a lot of money with a master's degree. You can probably earn less as a teacher, so you don't want to do it for the money. You do it because you're you're passionate about what you're doing, and I would say not just passionate about your subject area, but passionate about your students. Those are the teachers that I saw were the happiest with what they were doing, is that they really needed to be around those students. That was their fulfillment. Um, uh, when I'm thinking of several examples when teachers were going through a really rough patch personally, they felt better getting into the classroom and being with their students. Um, so that, I think that's essential. You need to do some student teaching. You need to talk to teachers. You need to be in that environment. And if you really can't stand 13 and 14-year-olds, that's not where you want to be. You don't want to be with young adolescents, unless that's something that you think is really cool to do. But
I'm guessing there are a lot of young people that are interested in being teachers, though, because it's
yeah.
obviously a very important and highly respected job in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you talk to the differences of like um, public school to private school or other, not even necessarily school opportunities? There are outside of school opportunities as well. And then, if you could also talk about age differences, like there's just so much diversity in a person who could become a teacher. I think you were mentioning you want to do
Yeah.
student teaching and that sort of thing, but how does a person really hone in on where they would best fit in the education world?
Yeah, because it's a world of difference between elementary. If you want to teach first, second graders, that's a whole different world. You're really nurturing personalities
Right.
more than providing content. Whereas you get to high school, you're providing content, and you may not have very strong personal relationships with students. And in fact, I always thought, well, it's probably better to keep that professional distance along the way. Some teachers are able to narrow that gap, and do it quite well, but there are certain risks involved as well. So it can be a challenge to navigate, personalities and families and the variety of situations that students find themselves in as well.
So, say you go to school with the intention of being a teacher and you find out that that is not a good fit for you. Are there options for those people? What would be, I mean, are you stuck in that profession? Or are there options once you get there that you can develop into a different area? You are very
Yeah,
involved in the community and you do all
yeah,
kinds of things outside of the classroom for the community, which I think is a perfect fit to your background, for
yeah.
example.
Well, rebooting after being a teacher for a few years can be a real challenge, um, because it doesn't necessarily translate into the business world,
True.
um, or it can be a hard transition to make. So once you're in, you've got a contract, maybe you've got tenure, you're in a union, things are really clicking, you're safe and secure pretty well, and then to kind of start over again, you're regularly promoted up the pay scale as a teacher, and then to start as at a beginning level somewhere, um, that could be a challenge.
That
But
would
if
be
you
a,
know if you know people, if you have a friend that's in business and say, "Hey, Ray, I know that you can do this kind of stuff. Come work with me." That personal kind of thing can make that transition easier. But if you're just going to be spreading your resume around, um, that can be a little tougher.
So it might be a good idea to really get your feet wet before you commit to a profession like this. And you had mentioned student teaching. Um, so say these young people, maybe middle school or high school, are thinking about going into education. How do they find out whether they're good at that? The first thing that comes to my mind is the swimming teachers at the local rec center were fabulous for our child when he was little. And I think of
Hmm.
those young people being great teachers eventually. But are there other opportunities like that?
Oh, um, well, first of all, student teaching is a regular part of the education curriculum. So if you want to get an education certificate, you are going to spend a good bit of time in the classroom, just as a
But you're
matter of
already
course.
committed. I'm saying, how do people
Yes.
know if that's the way they want to go in the first place?
Yeah, you can't just assume that because you were a student,
Yeah,
you know what it's like to be a teacher,
for sure.
because it's a whole different world. What the student sees and what the teacher experiences are something quite a bit different. So knowing a teacher,
Mm,
um, maybe shadowing a teacher would be a good way to see what that is like. Um, so it's just making a little bit of time commitment, and don't limit yourself to just one age group. So if you can shadow somebody at elementary, somebody at middle school, somewhat at high school, those would all be uh, really well advised, because you may think you want to be a high school teacher, but then you see what it's like to be in elementary, or the other way around. Actually, I have so much respect for elementary teachers because they don't get a chance to blink.
right.
They are on duty all day long. Even though they may have scheduled, break time and prep time, it's not really much. So
Ray,
you're,
what if, oh,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
What if somebody wants to teach at the college level?
That's that's a whole different world, and I haven't done that. I know some people go from public school teaching to college school teaching, and it's just a natural pathway. Um, I think you have to have a good resume. Um, you don't want to just complete your studies okay. You want to be really good at what you have studied. So if you're an English teacher, you want to be the English teacher who graduated with honors.
Yes.
And often you want at least the ambition to continue and get a doctorate in whatever you studied. So it can be, um, you may only be part time, or you may be, um, if you don't have a doctor's. Yeah. So
Right.
it's it can be very worthwhile. Once you've got a PhD in a subject, um, that can open a lot more doors than a master's degree will.
Sure. Now, you mentioned networking with people who have been in the profession before. On
Mm-hmm.
that note, would you be willing to be available to any of the young people that might watch this video that could send you a question about your career? Would you
Sure.
do that?
Yeah, I'm available.
Well,
Um,
you're a very likable person, so it would be easy to
oh,
talk
well, thanks,
to.
Chris.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time today. I appreciate it, and you've been wonderfully informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.